everybody, and welcome. Okay, let's start over. Hey everybody, and welcome back to episode 12 of the Positivity Xperience podcast. I am your host, Lori, and I'm actually recording this for YouTube the same time I'm recording this for the podcast. And it's super weird because I don't know where to look. And I'm going to be talking for about 25 minutes. So I'm going to be talking and people on YouTube are going to be like, hey. But I have seen this happen with the Joe Rogan Experience and other podcasts. And actually my son's best friend, he's like my second son, said, yeah, just do that. Because some people will prefer to listen and some people will prefer to watch you. So you're going to really see a big treat because I did manage to take a shower and I have on my robe, which I'm recording this on a Sunday. And you guys know, like I love my warm, snuggly, comfy robes, and that's just how it's going to roll. So on YouTube or not. So today I want to talk to you guys a lot about expectations and how you expecting yourself out of other people are always going to be an Achilles heel for you. And until you can get really snuggly and comfortable with the fact that everybody is not going to respond the way that you want them to, and getting clear with it. I don't just mean like, okay, I know logically. And then when is your expectations too much? When is it not enough? When do you jump ship? When do you know? So there's a few caveats that we're going to cover this week in this week's podcast. And before I jump in, I want to say hello to all of my lovely listeners in Canada. I had a lot of people reaching out to me from Canada and other countries, by the way. So hello, international waters, and hello, Canada. So welcome and thanks for being here with us. So I want to talk to you guys about expectations and what exactly is that. So here's the thing. When you're expecting you out of people, it's looking at a situation and going, okay, this is how I would do it, and this is how it's got to be done. And that's where the big sticking point is, because it doesn't have to be done that way. You may want it done that way. That doesn't mean it has to be done that way. Meaning, if you're having, it's a simple example. It's lazy. It's like silly, right? But when you're in the kitchen, and if somebody else loads the dishwasher and it's not done to your capacity, why get hurt about it? Like you're like, oh my God, these people aren't doing it correctly. Okay, so like if you're, you know what I mean? So you want to be really careful about what your expectations are. Now, the other side of that coin is like, okay, well, do people just do whatever? This is where compromise is going to come into play. And if you are in a situation where you're struggling with compromising, that's a whole other topic that we're going to have to get into, because just because you share what your expectations are, what your love language is, all of these things, just because that's what you're sharing doesn't mean that that's what people have to do. That's simply a guideline, right? And the same way that you have your expectations, others may have different expectations and you may not align with those. And so this is where you often get your feelings hurt. Example of that would be, you call your friends when they're not feeling well, or you call them if they're going through something and you ask them, how are they doing? What's going on with you? And they tell you. And then you're in peril, or there's something going on with you at that time, and nobody reaches out to you. And you're like, my feelings are hurt. Okay. Not everybody is going to respond to love or show love the way that you show love to people. And it doesn't mean it's wrong. Now, this is where I was saying, this is where there's like that gray area, because we all like to think in black and white. If it's done this way, great. If it's not done this way, that's terrible. Well, no, there is a flexibility in the middle somewhere. There's a compromise. So in this compromise, first of all, you have to be very clear with what is it that you can do for yourself internally to make yourself, I guess, happier, for lack of a better term. Make yourself happier. Make yourself more balanced. Meaning, everybody else trying to do things to fit all of these little voids that you have and all of these little boxes that you want people to check, are you checking them, right? So I've said this before, I'll say it 500 million times over. Humans can't make other humans happy. It's physically impossible. It's not a thing. Can they bring joy? Absolutely. Can they enhance your happiness? Absolutely. Can they make it harder? Absolutely. So there's a combination, but at the end of the day, it's not somebody else's responsibility. It really isn't to make you happy. Just because you have a spouse or a partner, it's not their job to make you happy. The idea of a healthy relationship, right, is friendship, is compromise. I know that sounds perfect world. And you're like, guess what? Some days you're going to pull 100% of it. Other days somebody else might have to pull 100% of it. So you have to understand this is where the friendship comes in, but also your healthy boundaries and curbing your expectations of expecting someone to do something the way you want them to do it because it's going to validate you. And this goes into external validation and why external validation, again, will never serve you. And it's all external validation is also going to be something where you're only going to get that for a short period of time. And then you're going to question it. Oh, why'd this person do this? What do they want? That's why you want to find that peace within. So going back to that dishes example, blah, 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 whoever it is, doesn't do the dishes correctly correctly to your standards, right? Let's say they put the cups down in the bottom and you're like, what is the problem here? Like cups don't go anywhere. Cups go up top and plates go down bottom and you have a way. It's not going to be that big of a deal if it's done the other way around. It really isn't. So if it really bothers you and puts a burr in your side and you're like, damn it, I hate this so much. Ask yourself why. Like, well, because this is how it's supposed to be done. Says who? Well, this is how my mom, okay, now we're going to it. You see what I mean? So a lot of your expectations, most of your expectations are going to have a deeper seated root for you. So you want to ask yourself, what is it about it? So let's say, sticking with the dishes theme, your mom, dad, whomever said, absolutely not. This is how we load the dishwasher. This is where we put everything. And if you didn't, you'd be like, come on, man, what are you doing? You know, the cups go here. That's in your head, right? So now hubby, wife, whatever says, okay, I'll load it. And they load it not to the way that you would like it or the way that you were getting in trouble if you didn't do it. That's where it is, right? So there's always this deeper issue. And you say, well, isn't it of a level of, not the dishes aspect of it, but you say, isn't this a level of respect for people to, you know, I tell my partner where I'm going, like, aren't they supposed to tell me where I'm going? Well, that's called compromise, and make sure that you're talking about it. You don't, and there's a whole plethora that comes into that. Well, I expect them to tell me where they're going. Well, okay, let's not do that. You shouldn't expect somebody to tell you where they're going. Is it a mutual respect? Absolutely. Absolutely. If you're in a relationship, I mean, you don't have to tell somebody every 5 steps that you take though. Like, so I want to keep that, so reel that in for a minute, because I also don't want you to think that somebody has to tell you every time they make a stop. If they tell you, I'm coming straight home from work, and they stop off 3 places, I don't feel the need to tell you this, right? So I also want you to keep in mind that's that gray section. But here's the thing. If you're expecting them to do it because it shows you that they're trustworthy, way deeper issue. Way deeper issue. If somebody needs to check with you with every move that they make, that is a deeper issue than respect. Okay? And so just because you may do that, you may say, and I have clients whose husbands or wives or you know, partners will say, well, I do it. Well, okay. Well, I do it, so I expect that to be done. Negative. That is where you find that you'll never feel like people get you. You'll be like, well, I don't understand. Like, what is wrong with all these people around me? Nothing. Okay. Now, when you're establishing your healthy boundaries, and healthy boundaries, I will remind you, are never done for other humans. You don't set boundaries for other people. Boundaries are something that you get really comfy and snuggly with yourself. Like, what are the boundaries that you are, like an example of that, and I always give this, is saying no without guilt. You know, hey, do you want to do blah, blah, blah? No. No. Okay. Yeah, I mean, you really don't have to follow it up with anything else. This goes into expectations. Let's say it's you that asks somebody to go to lunch. Or, I'm sorry, they ask you to go to lunch. And you're like, man, I really don't want to go. But, I mean, I have a lot to do anyway. I don't want them to be mad. So then you go on this whole diatribe. You're like, well, you know, I would love to, but I can't because little Billy has lacrosse. And then from lacrosse, we have to go down to the, okay, whoa, why are we giving all this information? You're like, well, because I don't want somebody to be mad at you. I mean, you know, mad at me. Okay. If you're walking around here expecting that if you do things a certain way, people aren't going to get mad at you, again, you're going to get your feelings hurt because people's perception is their reality. It doesn't mean it's your reality. It's their reality, right? So that's the real to it. So when you are in that expectation phase, and now you've, fast forward ahead, and you ask this friend at a later time to lunch or dinner or whatever, and they go, no. You go, oh, they said, okay, no. Like, now you start with the overthinking. Oh my God, what did I do wrong? Well, I mean, why? Like, what? Like, are they mad at me? Why? Because they just said no with no explanation? Because you're thinking, I would tell them all this stuff because this way they know it's not them. That may not be important for them to understand, right? And keep in mind, you don't have to kiss everybody's butt, right? And say, this is why I'm not doing it. Because half the time, let's be honest, half the time if somebody says, hey, come over to the house, let's have a painting party. You're like, I would rather walk naked down the street in a snowstorm, right? Obviously, you know, there is a compromise. This is a gray area. This is where you go, oh my gosh, I don't want to do this, but maybe I'll do it for a little bit of time. Or maybe I'm not going to do it and I'll just be straight up honest. Be like, you know what? I just can't do it today. Or, you know, hey, yes, I'll be over tomorrow. You know, like, keep in mind, this is where the boundaries come into play. So boundaries and expectations, do they go hand in hand? Let me think of it. Yes. And I'm hesitant in saying, not hesitant, but I want to be specific in saying that. Yes, because actually, yes. So yeah, that I just totally had a conversation with myself in the head. But yes, so this is exactly what happens, right? When you have a boundary, and you say, okay, well, this person keeps overstepping my boundary. Well, that's because you don't really believe in the boundary, because people can't overstep something that you really believe in. It's you know, going through this expectation of how you would feel on the other end. So a lot of the things in which you're doing or not doing, so to speak, with expectations, comes from how you're automatically putting themselves in that position. Yes, we want empathy. I'm not asking you not to be empathetic, but I'm also not asking you to put your internal dialogue onto that person, because that's not the case, right? You know, I mean, I'll give you an example for myself on that. I don't really care about cards. Like, they're not really my jam. Like, birthday cards, whatever, I don't care. Like, Christmas cards, no, I don't care. Like, you don't send me one, I'm fine. Like, I'm not gonna be like, oh my God, I'm off the Christmas list. Don't care. And I just don't send them, right? It's not, I mean, yeah, like, if my mom and dad were still present, and I know, like, well, my dad wouldn't care, but like my mom really liked cards, I would make the effort with her. But that doesn't mean I'm going to make the effort. And I wouldn't do it out of like obligation. I would make the effort maybe sometimes, maybe not others. I wouldn't, you know what I mean? It's like whatever. But I say that because just because I don't send cards and doesn't mean that I'm not a big fan of them. Other people may find that's their way of showing some kind of gratitude and affection. I appreciate it. I don't need it, right? And just because you send me one, okay, now you've mailed me a Christmas card. I'm seeing little Billy at his lacrosse game. It's great. I'm seeing it. I admire it. That's great. Doesn't mean I'm going to send you one. Doesn't mean I don't like you. Doesn't mean I'm mad at you. No, it just means I don't send Christmas cards. Or I used to. You know, now it's like in the world of social media and all of the ways to send one way of like doing things. I'm like, this is great. I just post one picture and go, hey, Merry Christmas. You know, that's good enough. And I feel like that's really important because, yeah, if those things are important to you, that's lovely. And like I said, people can respect that. Absolutely. There is that level of mutual respect. But it's when you start expecting it. Now, let's kind of shift that and go, okay, so now you're like, great. So now I'm not supposed to have any expectations. Calm it down. That's black and white thinking. We ain't doing that. So let's give you the gray area of that. Yes, there's compromise. Are there things that some people are just not willing to and I mean, you shouldn't have to compromise on everything. Like if you have a certain way of a moral compass, you shouldn't have to always do that. But I'm saying on a day-to-day basis. So let's say you're in there and you're like, okay, I am really finding that it's not just me. Like, I mean, I've realized this is how I'm taking it, but my perception is my reality. So your perception is your reality. So how you feel is how you feel, right? But again, remember, it's not all about you and it's not all about them. But if you're getting there and you're like, okay, this person really, or this situation, let's say people, whatever, family, it doesn't matter. They can be family. There's no special obligation button that goes, this person's your blah, blah, blah. You have to do that. That's not a thing. Not a thing. Again, compromise, yes. Doing it because somebody expects it, that's a little prickly, right? That's going to be a little prickly. So are there things in that gray area where you say, okay, this is absolutely a deal breaker for me? Yeah. But that's where the healthy boundaries come in, is going, okay, what can I do? Now, here's the thing. Some people are like, this is my path. This is how I walk it. There's zero compromise. And this is just how I'm rolling. Okay. Well, you can sit home or sit with them and go over and over and over and over and over again on, but this matters to me. Okay. They may not hear you. They may not be willing to meet you halfway. They may not be willing to be in a compromise. They may say ridiculous things that drive me crazy, which is, I've been this way all my life. No, that is not a thing. That just means that you don't want to get out of your comfortable zone. But when you hear that, that's where you get to make the decision. You get to make the decision. Is that something you want to put up with? Or not put up with. Wrong choice of words. Is that something that you're willing to roll with and say, okay, this is what I'm going to do. Cool, rock with it, own it, live it. But if you're going to make that choice, you do not get to sit in the house or sit wherever and go, oh my God, this person's draining. Why can't they just see my point? Well, we know they're not going to, or they may not want to shift that. And they're not wrong. That's just how they're doing things, right? So that's where you have to decide, is this something that I want to stay in? Now, listen, if it's a family member, if it's a parent, if it's whatever, again, that doesn't give them carte blanche to do whatever the hell they want to do. It just doesn't. So then you have to say, okay, obviously I'm not just, depending on how bad it is, I'll say, obviously you're not just going to walk away, but depending on how bad it is, you may. But if not, you don't have to announce to somebody, okay, listen, Dad, this is my boundary. Like, you don't have to announce that. You just act accordingly, right? So if you realize that somebody's expecting you to do something, you don't always have to do it just to make somebody else happy. And that's where the internal work is going to come into play. Now, long-arming people is perfectly fine. What is long-arming? It's where you're not totally cutting them off, but you're establishing that fact with yourself that says, ooh, okay, I'm not going to be super accessible to the person, okay? No, you do not have to explain yourself left and right, because you don't have to be totally rude and cut them off, right? But now let's say this is a partner, or it's a marital relationship, or whatever. There may be times where somebody says, I'm not going to go to therapy. This is how I do things. It's all you, which is a whole different ballgame. And it doesn't have to be this dramatic. I'm just giving you an example. Well, you don't get to say over and over again, I don't understand why they're blah. You know what I mean? Like, we've had this conversation. They may not be willing to do that. So that's where you have to say your expectations, just because you may hear them and you may want to meet them all the way there or whatever, doesn't mean everybody will. So that's where you have to decide, what are you willing to compromise? What levels of expectation are you going to kind of keep in the relationship? I mean, in theory, okay, like if I was going to say what would be, and I'm hesitant to say this anyway, but what kind of I guess if I would say in a relationship, and I'm talking about love relationships, partnerships, what would be an expectation? A healthy expectation would be based on friendship. All relationships, and I promise I'll do a podcast on this too, and maybe a podcast YouTube. It's just, like I said, I feel weird, like talking to myself. No, I don't really feel weird, but I'm like, you're staring at me doing what? Nothing. But, here's the thing. Friendship is going to be the key. Meaning, in a friendship, when you're going into the relationship from a friendship perspective, you're kind of looking at it a little different. Because if you're a friend with someone, you're going to be more inclined to sort of have some gray area, right? In a friendship. When you have a friendship and you have a little gray area there, it's easier. And friendship isn't based in sex. It's not based with looks or anything. I'm saying full-on friendship. That's what I say, that there's an expectation there. And again, I don't even like to use the word expectation, but let's say healthy relationship, right? Because expectations are going to be individual. But a healthy relationship is going to be one where you go, cool, I don't really understand that, but I'm willing to roll with it, and vice versa. But again, I would caution you on thinking that everything's going to be 50-50 all the time. That's really, really an unrealistic expectation, because everybody goes through things in their own way. So some people are going to give you 100% sometimes, and some people are going to give you 10% of what they have. It's just, that's same thing with you. And so that's where your expectations come. And then also expectations of self. Let's talk about that one, right? Because the expectation of yourself, and is it that you're expecting yourself to complete 15 projects on the weekend? No, we're not going to do that. Are you expecting yourself to like lose 10 pounds by summer, fit in your old jeans by summer? Like, goals are fabulous. Goals are highly encouraged. But if goals become something that is going to be detrimental to your health, to make you feel like you have to achieve that on a certain time, that's why, yes, use that as your strategic plan, right? Everybody needs a plan, or if not, it's just some random dream in your head. But with the plan, right, you start with the plan, and now we say, how are we going to get there? So let's say you're 8 weeks out from summer, okay? And you're 8 weeks out by summer. Hold on, what's up?
Garage door again.
And you say to yourself, I'm going to lose 20 pounds. Wow. Okay. First of all, let's bring that down a notch, because healthy weight loss is going to be about 1 to 2 pounds a week. But that's what I'm saying. It's like, you don't want to say, I'm just going to lose this by summer, or I'm just going to do this by summer. Great. Except for the fact that that may not be a realistic goal and a realistic expectation for yourself. So just like you're putting all of these like maybe overachieving expectations on other people, we want to make sure that you're not overachieving for yourself either. Because if you're going to be a high overachiever for self, it's going to be really hard to always hit that level, right? It's always going to be a harder level. It's always going to be harder for you to hit this like crazy high expectation. Like, I expect this out of relationships. I expect this out of myself. I expect this out of blah, blah, blah. Okay, notch it down, because expectations not just of other people, but expectations of self can be very detrimental to your health, to your mental health. Well, sometimes physical, but really especially to your mental health. And that's where you want to dig deep to why that level of expectation is there. Is the level of expectation, like I said, because it was put on you by other people? Is the level of expectation because you feel like that is what you need to have your void filled? And then that's when we start doing the self-work, right? And digging deeper into that self-work and going, okay, let me deal with some of these things and understand expectations upon your healing, right? Expectations of therapy. It's not going to be overnight. Nope. We're not just going to talk about what you want to talk about, because that's not going to be, that's not a thing. You don't just go into therapy with this expectation of, I only want to talk about why my relationship's bad, but I really don't see the purpose of why we're going back to my childhood. Well, I'm sorry, that's how therapy works. So with expectations, again, we all have them, but it's learning to strategize and cope with them, because expectations of some things are great, but it's just when it becomes unhealthy. Where does the expectations of unhealthy come into play? And most high expectations are always going to be unhealthy, and they're always going to leave you empty, even ones of yourself, right? And so expectations of things is where you want to say, does it have to do with control? Does it have to do with why I can't let things go? Does it have to do with making me feel whole? Getting to the deeper rooted issues of your expectations is going to be what's really going to set sort of that healthy boundary with yourself and with your expectations, right? So it's going to give you that healthy center, but only when you're willing to loosen the strings and realize that just because somebody isn't reaching that part that you want them to reach to doesn't mean that it's bad. If in fact it's something that you cannot compromise on, and FYI, don't expect people to be able to read your minds. That means I do not care if you don't like confrontation. You cannot expect someone to automatically know what you want because you told them this 5 times. Okay, it doesn't mean people really get it. Okay, and so that's the part that I want to get you to, right? Is to get yourself to that space of being okay with not having this, everybody hit this level of, okay, this is what I need, and this is how I need it, and this is what I'm willing to do, and this is what I'm not willing to do, all the way across the board. And that's going to be the imperative part for you, because if not, you're going to find yourself constantly wondering why everybody, and including self, are not reaching these high goals, right? And when you're not reaching these high goals, that's where it can become like a real issue. And it can put a thorn in your side. And trying to reach everybody else's expectations that may not align with you. You know, like I said, when people say things, well, I'm 70 years old and this is how I've been all my life, like I get it. And there's a level of compromise, right? We don't want you to totally switch it up like a flip switch and just change it. However, people are going to kind of get away with what you allow them to get away with. And that's fine because we're all humans and we want to have that space and we shouldn't have to have them in this little box. And you realizing that it's okay for you to not reach everybody's expectations. Like I said, going back to the dishes example, it's okay to have a sink full of dishes. It really is. If you're like, no, it isn't. Yeah, it really is. The world is not going to explode because you have a sink full of dishes. It's not. It is not. Okay. Is it going to drive you crazy? Why? Well, because I just like it neat. Great. Why? Well, because I like it that way. Why though? Because it looks good. Again, why? Well, because when I was growing up, okay, now we're getting to it, right? So things aren't always just basic. Like remember, a lot of things in which you process every single day or you worry about every single day, there's a symptom and then it has legs underneath. And the legs underneath that's the roots. And that's really what we want to be able to address. So guys, that's it for this week's podcast on expectations. I would encourage you to write down, here's a little homework for you. I would encourage you to write down levels of expectations, right? Because remember, we want to find gray areas. And ask yourself, if you're having a struggle time with those gray areas, ask yourself why. Because just because you're doing it your way doesn't mean it's the right way for everybody else. So I will leave you with that this week. And remember, you guys can, in the show notes and YouTube notes, I'll have my website in there. So if you want, you can find out more information. If you want to ever have a one-on-one session, you can, but that is a paid service. Oops. My YouTube and my Facebook are obviously free. So yeah, guys, you guys have an amazing week. Welcome to spring. I'm recording this the second day of spring of 2021. So welcome. Spring has sprung here in the Northern Hemisphere. If you are in the Southern Hemisphere, to my Australian lovely friends, I know that it's going to start getting cooler for you, and that's okay. So welcome, guys. I love you guys, and I will talk to you next week. So that was weird. Yeah, guys. So I'm really happy. Oh, look at this lighting. So I'm really, really happy that you guys got to tune in. It's a little weird format for me, but I just wanted you to have it. So in case you didn't want to hear it as a podcast or just play it on YouTube through something, you can do that too. But yeah, you heard it. Like expectations. Find that gray area. Super important.